Happy Belated Birthday. Written by Ink in My Heart and on the Page. Read by Eleanor Elizabeth. Summary. It's a Death Star puzzle. Happy birthday, dude. Sorry it's so late, Ned said. The glass May had been washing slipped from her hand, hitting the edge of the sink as it shattered, glass spraying in all directions. Her whole body froze, a gasp escaping her lips as her heart dropped like ice in her chest. No. No, 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 no. She had absolutely not forgotten her nephew's birthday. No, it wasn't possible. Aunt May? May looked up from the pot that she'd been leaning over, keeping a watchful eye on the sauce she was making up for dinner. Peter stood in the entrance of the kitchen, hands curling into the sleeves of his too large jumper. May liked to call them his sweater paws, as he was always doing this whenever he wore a jumper. She wasn't sure if he realised or not, or if it was just a habit he had developed over the years. Hi, sweetie, what's up? May asked. Can Ned come over tomorrow? Peter asked. He's back from visiting his grandma finally, and... Of course, May beamed, cutting Peter off from what would have been an unnecessarily long-winded rant. Ned's always welcome over, you know that. Peter bobbed his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. Great, thanks. And then he was spinning around and heading back to his room. May bit her lip as she watched her nephew return to his room. Something happened in the past week that caused him to withdraw. He wasn't nearly as talkative as he usually was, barely a smile on his face. May tried to ask. Was Flash getting to him? Had something happened on patrol that he didn't want them to know about? Was he missing Ned that much? Peter had assured her that there was nothing wrong and that he was fine. A quick text to Tony had confirmed that nothing had happened on patrol, but Peter had also cancelled his weekly lab sessions with the genius, claiming that he had too many tests to study for, which was true, but Peter seemed sad, and May wasn't sure that his workload was not what was bringing him down. The smoke alarm suddenly started blaring, and May whipped around to see the smoke pouring out of the pot. Shit! She switched off the stove, grabbing the nearest tea towel and waving it frantically over the smoke alarm in an attempt to shut it off. In the cloud of smoke that was filling their apartment, she saw Peter hurry to throw open all the windows, quickly grabbing another tea towel and joined her in fanning that room as best as they could. When the fire alarm finally shut off, May coughed and dropped the tea towel in defeat. Pizza? Whatever you feel like, Peter shrugged. May sighed heavily and reached for her phone. May was doing the remaining dishes from last night's dinner. The pot had been a lost cause, and she had simply tossed it, when Ned arrived the next day. For the first time in over a week, Peter was excited. When there was a knock at the door, Peter went flying across the apartment, yanking open the door with a flourish that had May blinking. Dude! Ned greeted, smiling brightly. His backpack was slung over his shoulders, his hat on top of his head, clearly going all out for the day. Ned! Peter pulled his best friend into a hug before dragging him into the apartment. You're back! Is your grandma okay? She's fine, Ned smiled. I think it was like the 18th time she said she was going to die. She said she could hear death coming for her, but it turned out it was just a possum on her roof. Hey, May. Hi, Ned. May turned to smile over her shoulder. Glad to hear your grandma is okay. Me too, Ned grinned, swung his backpack over his shoulder, unzipping it. Hey, dude, I got you something. You didn't have to do that, Peter frowned, but he was looking curiously as Ned rummaged through the bag. Of course I did, Ned scoffed before withdrawing a medium-sized box wrapped in paper. It's a Death Star puzzle. Happy birthday, dude. Sorry it's so late. The glass May had been washing slipped from her hand, hitting the edge of the sink as it shattered, glass spraying all directions. Her whole body froze, a gasp escaping her lips as her heart dropped like ice in her chest. No. No, 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 no. She had absolutely not forgotten her nephew's birthday. No, it wasn't possible. Whoa, are you okay, May? Ned asked. Fine. May gasped, spinning around, back planting against the sink. Water soaked the back of her shirt, but she ignored it, heart pounding too fast in her chest. Peter wasn't looking at her, his gaze fixed on the present that Ned had handed over. He fidgeted, no doubt feeling the horror on her face as she stared at him, wide-eyed and guiltily. Did you cut yourself? Peter asked, gaze flickering up briefly before he looked back at his feet. No, May swallowed thickly. Peter, Ned and I are going out. Peter cut her off quickly. He placed the box on their small table before grabbing Ned and dragging him to the door. We'll be back later. I'm not sure when. Peter, May tried again. I'll be back later, promise, Peter said, and then he pushed a confused Ned out of the apartment, door shutting with a quiet click. May wished he had slammed it. Silence rang through the apartment as May stood there in horror. Shit, May hissed. She weaved through the shattered glass until reaching the living room, where she had tossed her phone that morning. It was right where she'd left it when she opened it up, quickly pulling up a number and dialing it with shaky fingers. Pick up, May hissed, starting to pace. May, to what do I owe a call this fine Saturday morning? Tony answered in a jovial tone. Tell me you didn't forget, May said. Me? Forget? Ha! Who are you talking to? May stopped pacing, falling to the couch and bringing a shaky hand up to cover her eyes. "Don't play with me, Stark. Tell me you remembered." "May, what's going on?" Tony was immediately alert. "Peter's birthday," May whispered. "Tell me you did something for him." There was silence on the other end of the phone. May whimpered, tears welling in her eyes. Shit, I didn't do anything. I didn't even wish him a happy birthday. Oh my God, what have I done?" "May, calm down," Tony said. "Calm down!" May shrieked and jumped up and down to resume her pacing. "I forgot his birthday, Tony. My own nephew. I haven't even gotten him anything. I've been so busy with work and picking up extra shifts." May cut herself off with a strong shake of her head. No, that isn't an excuse. I forgot his birthday." "You're not the only one," Tony said bitterly. May choked on a sob. "We forgot. How did we let this happen? God, no wonder he hasn't been talking to me." "I'll be right over," Tony said. He hung up the phone, leaving May to collapse back onto the couch and sob into her hands. She was the worst aunt in the world. "They forgot your birthday," Ned gasped, hand shooting out to grip Peter's wrist. They halted to a stop in the middle of the path, ignoring the grumbles of the early morning shoppers around them. "Dude, why didn't you tell me?" Peter shrugged, shifting uncomfortably. "It's just a birthday, Ned." "Peter," Ned frowned. "No, I get it," Peter said. He looked around. "May's been super busy lately. Since Ben died, she's had to pick up so many more shifts, and with the whole extracurricular activities, our food bill's gone way up. And I didn't expect Mr. Stark to know. I never told him. I mean, it's not like we're really there, I guess." "Dude," Ned shook his head. "Tony Stark is totally on the way to be your dad." "What?" Peter spluttered. "No, he isn't." "Dude, he totally is," Ned chuckled at his friend's expression. "Ever since the Vulture, you've been spending every other day with the man. He dropped you off at school the other week." "That doesn't make him my dad," Peter denied, cheeks flushing. "Peter, the man shoved you into a hoodie out the front of school because you shivered," Ned said. "That was 100% dad-like behaviour." "I don't thermoregulate," Peter said weakly. "That kind of just proves my point," Ned said smugly. "Even if he was, which he isn't," Peter insisted, "he's super busy too, and it's just a birthday." "Did you not want to celebrate?" Ned asked quietly. "Is that why you didn't say anything?" Peter remained quiet, crossing his arms over his chest and shoving his hands under his armpits. "Is it because Ben's not here?" Ned asked quietly. "I guess," Peter mumbled. "Maybe a little." "He was going to take you to a baseball game, right?" Ned said. Peter nodded, wiping his eyes with the edge of his sleeve. "I guess it's been harder since Ben died. And with just May's salary, she's been working so hard. And when May didn't say anything, it was just easier to pretend it wasn't my birthday." Ned nodded solemnly. He hesitated, mouth opening and closing, before he found the courage to speak. "I still think May would have wanted you to tell her. And Mr. Stark too." Peter sighed. "She does so much for me. I don't want her to feel guilty about forgetting my birthday, and I don't want Mr. Stark to think he has to get me things. He's already done so much for me, and it's only Spider-Man he cares about." "I think she's going to feel guilty either way," Ned pointed out. "And as for Mr. Stark, dude, he likes you. Peter Parker, not just Spider-Man. Yeah, he totally found you because of it, but I've seen you with him, Peter. He has so many dad vibes, he's one step away from getting a 'my kid goes to Midtown' bumper sticker." Peter moaned into his hands, but there was a small thrill at Ned's words. He peeked out from his hands to glance at Ned. "Do you think it would be weird if I sort of see Mr. Stark as a dad-like person?" "I don't think it's weird. I think it would be good for you," Ned patted him on the shoulder. "Come on, let's go to the arcade and make a pros and cons list as to why Mr. Stark should be your dad." May was picking up glass when Tony entered the Parker apartment. She spared him a glance before sweeping up the rest of the glass, sniffing and her shoulders shaking. Tony crossed the room to May. He crouched down, gently taking the brush and pan from her trembling hands, before standing back up and setting it on the bench. He held out his hand for her, only waiting a beat before she took his hand. He curled his fingers around hers and helped her to her feet, gently steering her into the living room. "Where's Peter?" Tony asked, lowering May down to the couch. "He's out with Ned," May sniffed, her voice congested with tears. "Ned, who didn't forget his best friend's birthday. How could I do this?" "As much as we wish it didn't, these things do happen, May," Tony said heavily. Guilt swelled in his stomach, but there was nothing he could do about missing Peter's birthday. They could only move forward and show Peter how sorry they were. "He's been so quiet," May hiccuped. "I thought it was maybe Spider-Man related, or that kid Flash, but he said it wasn't. This is so much worse than what I've been imagining. He must hate me." "I don't think Peter is capable of hating anyone," Tony said. May sent him a watery, withering look. "What I'm saying is that this is Peter. "There's no way he could hate you, May," Tony said. He held up his hand as May went to argue. "I'm sure he's disappointed. Not that he would ever tell us. I'm sure he didn't want to worry us by bringing it up." It sounded exactly like Peter, and more tears welled up in May's eyes. "We can fix this, though," Tony said firmly. They had to, because Tony couldn't live in a world where they had failed Peter Parker. Ned had provided an excellent distraction and a complex list of pros and cons as to why Tony Stark would make a great dad. For the first time since his birthday, Peter felt lighter. He had been a little hurt when May had been at work that night, but he understood how busy she had been and really didn't want to make it a big deal. There had been plenty of birthdays celebrated, and he was going to have plenty more. He didn't need material things and only wished to spend it with those he loved. It just happened that nobody had been around this year. After winning against Ned in air hockey, they played all the games in the arcade before going to get burgers and fries. While they ate, they came to the conclusion that Tony Stark would make a fantastic dad, and made a game plan as to how Peter could bring it up with the man, in which was infinitely scarier than facing the Vulture had been. After a satisfying lunch, the boys had parted ways, Peter promising to text Ned later. Peter took his time walking home, preparing himself for the conversation he knew was waiting for him. What he wasn't expecting when he got home was to see Tony Stark making tea in the kitchen. Peter gaped at the billionaire, who turned around to look at him, lips quirking up into a quick smile. He looked pale, though. The lines on his face seemed deeper as Peter swallowed around the idea that there had to be a reason why Tony looked this way. "Peter?" May asked. Peter tore his gaze away from his mentor/father figure and looked at May, heart sinking as he took in her red eyes. This is exactly what he'd been trying to avoid. "Hey, May." Peter opened his arms for a hug. May immediately scooped him into a tight hug, pressing kisses on the side of his temple, her body shuddering as he hugged her just as tightly back. "Baby, I'm so sorry," May choked out. So sorry." "It's okay, May," Peter assured her. "Really, I promise." May pulled back, smoothing back Peter's curls, and looked at him sadly. "Oh, Peter, come sit down, sweetie." Peter allowed himself to be steered to the table, gaze locking to Tony as he brought over 2 mugs of tea and placed them on the table, taking a seat opposite him. "Hey, Mr. Stark," Peter stuttered out, his heart beating rapidly in his chest. Oh God, he and Ned hadn't planned on him being here when Peter got home. Peter was supposed to have time to build himself up to this. "Hey, kid," Tony gave him a smile, before his face went serious. "Did you have fun with Ned?" Yeah, Peter nodded, surprised that Tony called Ned by his real name. "We played games at the arcade and had some lunch. It was great." "I'm glad you had fun," May smiled, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Peter, I'm so sorry I forgot your birthday." Peter shifted in his chair. "Really, May, it's okay. It's just a birthday. I know you've been super busy with work." "That's not an excuse, Peter," May interrupted him, gently but firmly. "I'm never too busy for you, and I failed when I forgot your birthday." "We both did," Tony added. Peter looked at Tony with surprise. "What? No, I never told you when my birthday was. You didn't even have to get me anything. You've already done so much for me." "Still, I knew when it was," Tony said, face grim. "You're important to us, Peter. So important. And we screwed up. And I know you're saying it's not a big deal, but it is." "Why didn't you say anything?" May asked. "I didn't want you to feel guilty, like you do now," Peter said quietly, and he heard both May and Tony sigh. "Peter," May said, sliding her hand across the table to squeeze Peter's hand. "It isn't your job to worry about things like that. You should have said something sooner. I know I hurt you, and that isn't okay." Peter swallowed and squeezed May's hand. "It did hurt. A little. But I do understand. I know things have been harder for us, and I know it's because of me." May shook her head. "No, baby. It isn't your fault. Not at all. I need you to understand that." "Why didn't you come to me, Pete?" Tony asked. "You know I want you to come to me with anything. Not just Spider-Man stuff, but Peter stuff too." Feeling his cheeks flush, Peter said, "I didn't think we were there yet." He glanced up at Tony to see the man's face fall even further, and Peter hurried to explain. "But Ned explained it to me, and we agreed that we are, and that we're nearly at the bumper sticker stage." Tony's face twisted with confusion. "The bumper sticker stage?" "Yeah, you know." Peter was full on blushing now. "When proud parents put, 'My kid goes to,' whatever stickers on his cars." He trailed off, shifting nervously in his seat. Tony's face softened, and May squeezed his hand tightly. "Yeah, kid, we are there." Tony's hand settled onto his shoulder, giving it a squeeze. Peter felt his whole body relax, and he sunk down into the chair, feeling lighter than he had in a long time. "I know it's belated, but would you like to celebrate your birthday now?" May asked. Yeah, that would be great, Peter nodded. Can we go to the Thai place and have family dinner? That's all I really wanted anyway. Well, that and a new Lego set. How about we go get the Lego set first, Tony said. Then go to dinner? How does that sound? Peter beamed at the hopeful looks on Tony and May's face. Sounds like a very good belated birthday to me. The end.